the Curious Owl here, and welcome to another Top 5 Wednesday video for this week to finally round out the month of May and random topics to talk about. I'm going to talk about some books that I think are quite problematic in some ways, but I really enjoy them, whether it's based on characters or plot or anything regarding to that. Mostly these books I think that I've picked that are in no particular order are books that are problematic in different terms of content within the community, whether it's not liked well or it touches on some really problematic topics or doesn't discuss them well enough to a lot of people, but for some reason I really like them and I wanted to discuss these with you guys and hopefully have a really good conversation about these books and what they kind of help to represent or don't try to help represent. So first is the first book in the Mortal Instruments series by Cassandra Clare, City of Bones. I know that a lot of people really do not like this first book in the series, especially when they're trying to get into the series, and I know a lot of people have said that the writing is really juvenile and that the relationship between Clary and Jace is kind of awkward because they kind of have a relationship, but you find out that they're siblings and there's a whole mess with that. And while I will totally agree on all of those points, I still really like this book a lot for what it is because I know that the series is supposed to get better on as I go. I haven't gotten to that point where I've gotten to the second book yet because I've been busy reading other books that I've wanted to read. But I really did truly enjoy this book for what it was the time that I read it, and I will still wholeheartedly say that I enjoyed it and that I think I am really interested in reading the rest of the series and more of the world that Cassandra Clare has built around it, because there's just so much to play with in this kind of urban fantasy world that I think really needs to be, you know, discussed more in depth. And I think that just basing opinions off of the first book in the entire world, let alone the first book in the Mortal Instruments series, is a really problematic thing in itself, because you don't really get any true ideas of the whole thing if you don't look at everything in terms of the perspective of the whole world and the characters and things of that nature. The second book on my list is the Merciless series by Daniel Vega. Now, I absolutely loved this book, and I know that there are so many people out there that think this book is, this series in general, is just nothing but really kind of stupid gore and unnecessary gore and kind of like horror porn is what I had heard a lot of people talk about it, but I just love these books so much because this was such a huge step, I think, in terms of the horror section of YA. I don't think that there have been many people that have done what Daniel Vega has been able to do, and while, yes, a lot of the times it is a little cheesy and a little slasher fic kind of stuff or slasher pick kind of ideas like the Friday the 13th movies or whatever, I still really enjoyed it, and I am so excited to be able to get through the rest of the series because I have books 2 and 3, and I gotta say, the best thing about this whole thing for me is that my younger sister read this book herself, and since then has refused to come near my bookshelf with this series on it because she thinks that it is absolutely terrifying, and it cracks me the hell up. Next is the last book in the Divergent series, Allegiant by Veronica Roth, and I know that the main problem with this series has been that everyone hated the ending of this series, and honestly, I am so far removed from that opinion. I honestly loved the ending. I think that the way that Triss goes out in this entire series at the very end of this book is a way that I think she would have wanted to go out in the first place, which is, I think, why Veronica Roth wrote it in that way. I totally understand the want, though, for a main character to survive against all odds. I just think that having Triss live in this story would have just kind of made things really meh for the ending, especially with the way that Tobias honors her at the very end of the book. It warmed my heart so much and really kind of showcased how important this character was in this entire revolution of this society that was falling apart. Next is Everything by Nicola Yoon. Now, I remember when I read this that I loved it so much, and since then have realized that there are some problems associated with this book that I didn't realize at the time. For instance, the main problem being that the poor main character is subjected to her mother's agoraphobia of sorts by keeping her daughter set in her house so that she doesn't get sick and that she doesn't die after having lost her husband to some mysterious illness that they could not cure. And that is incredibly problematic. I realize, I understand the problem that is associated with that. So do not get me wrong when I say that I still love this book regardless of that. I do think, though, that there are so many things that could have been done to avoid that kind of problem. but I think it's the problem itself that is associated with this novel that makes it so important for us to recognize that we can't keep kids in a bubble just because we're so afraid of letting them go out into the world as adults. Because that is a huge thing I think that this problem kind of brings about, is more the idea of letting kids go when they are ready and stopping from ourselves from holding them back when we just want to keep them safe and keep them in our own little bubbles. I think that people kind of misconstrued the idea of this entire kind of keeping her in her house because her mother was obsessed with her staying healthy. I think it's more along the lines of she's lost one person in her life that she loved dearly and she doesn't want to lose another regardless of the consequences that can come with that. So I think that that's kind of my opinion on it, and I totally understand how people disagree with it. And finally, and I have been meaning to talk about this for several months now, and it's because I've had some very nasty comments regarding the review of this book that I did over last summer, and that is for Identical by Ellen Hopkins. I don't know how many people have gone to see that review, and I've seen the negative comments that have been put on that video, and me essentially fighting with someone who has said nothing but negative things about this book because they say that it is a complete ripoff of another book and that Ellen Hopkins is using this story as a way to oust her own family or things of that nature. And I about lost it with that person, I will say, and this is not to say that I am throwing it in their face. I'm not even going to mention their name because honestly, I really don't care at this point, and I finally ended the conversation with that person after pretty much a full day of back and forth with them about this book. But the reason that I enjoy this book so much is because I think it really delves into the idea of dissociative identity disorder in the most interesting way, and really about how the sexual abuse that goes on within this novel helps to understand where those kinds of mental illnesses can come from, because dissociative identity disorder, which is prevalent within this novel but is not known until the very end of the book, is linked to trauma-based events within people. Because this book delves into the story of twins who, one is actually being sexually assaulted by their father, and the other one is kind of feeling like she is left out. And it is very toxic, don't get me wrong. I think that the second character is absolutely disgusting in the idea that she thinks that she needs that kind of attention from her father. But as you read further into the story, you find out that actually one of the twins is dead, and the other twin thinks that her sister is still alive, but she's basically split her personality to where she is both herself and her twin sister. And it's basically a really different idea on looking at dissociative identity disorder, especially in someone who is a twin. And I really liked that. I think that the end was such a huge plot twist in terms of that, and I just really, really enjoyed it for that aspect. And I honestly do not think that Ellen Hopkins in any way was using any kind of personal information to oust family members. If she did that with anything, that was the Crank series, and there was a point to that because she was using her personal examples of her own life to really showcase to readers how dangerous meth is in people. But this has nothing to do with her family, to my knowledge. This has nothing to do with anyone she knew. This was something that she wanted to write because she writes dark material, and sexual abuse is a huge, huge problem within our society that needs to be addressed. And the mental health aspect of it, with looking into dissociative identity disorder and the problems that kind of come with it. So there you guys go. Those are all of the problematic favorite books that I have for one reason or another, and my opinions on them. If you guys have any thoughts of your own on these books, for if you like them or if you don't like them, please leave them in the comments below, and I would like to have a very kind discourse with you on these. Don't come attacking me just because you think that my opinion on one of these books is stupid. If you have a problem with my opinion, please let me know very kindly, as we should all as humans be kind to each other even if we disagree with each other. And I think we can have some people learn from that, don't you think? So anyway, thank you guys so much for joining me in this video. If you guys did enjoy it, please do give it a big thumbs up. And if you're not already and you'd like to be, hit that button down below and subscribe to become an owlet in our flock. I'm not afraid of anyone's comments. Honestly, at this point, I'll deal with it. And I will see all of you guys in my next video. Bye, guys.